All right, terrific. The meeting is called to order at 3 after 7. I'm working off of 2 screens, so bear with me here. The agenda is on the small screen. All right. The first, do we have, Randy, we don't have the minutes on the agenda here. Should we do those first?
Yep.
Okay. Randy sent around the minutes. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review them. And I'm going to ask if there are any corrections, changes, input into the minutes that Randy sent around, and hopefully everybody's reviewed.
I think we have a new strategy here, and that was that I finished the minutes within the first 2 weeks of the meeting. And so I got a lot of edits and comments. So the draft minutes were posted on our website already. And then after we approve them tonight, I'll remove that tagline that says draft minutes, and Vicki will be able to post them. So
terrific.
So they should be pretty good.
Okay, that's great to hear. I didn't have any changes.
Because you weren't present.
Oh, there you go. That'll do it. That'll do it every time. All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes as Randy modified them, say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the minutes are approved. I'm going to turn it over to Vicki, who sent out a written library director's report to see if there's anything that she wants to highlight or add to the written report that hopefully all of you have received and reviewed.
Did I get it?
They were in, she did send it to us, but I've also popped it in the agenda, and Vicki can still walk through them, even though it makes it easier for me when she sends the details that I don't have to scramble and type faster than I really can. So Vicki, why don't you just walk us through it?
Okay. I wanted to ask or see if anybody has materials at home for the kids group. So we're doing, lots of crafts things. And if you have, I was thinking maybe I should reach out to everybody here and see if there was things that you might have around that you thought that we could use. And anyways, I'd appreciate any of those things that we could do. And I'd love to have ideas. Diana would love to have ideas about crafts or projects that you think. We sort of divide the time up. It's not all craft, but the kids just enjoy doing that stuff with their hands. So it's a lot of fun. Our local, Judy Staber's new book has arrived. Oops. That did not come out. Oh, I must have something funny here. Anyways, that's Judy's. And also, I think everybody already knows that maybe Karen Halverson's book. Both of them, for whatever reason, are not coming out really well with my camera today. And those are both, we're going to set up a little collection of just local items so that these will not be able to go out to other libraries. They'll be right in here at some point. Everything is always subject to change, but that's where we're going to start out with that.
And for those of you who don't know, that Judy Staber lives over in Old Chatham and has been involved with the library for years, and is actually one of the people that is helping with the redesign of the lower level of the library for when we get to the actually doing the capital campaign and then construction. Sorry to interrupt.
And this book is actually about her mother. Rise Above It, Darling. There was a theater, there was an orphanage for theatrical people to send their kids to. And that's where Judy grew up, as her mother was an actress. So I think that that's mostly about her mother. I have not read it, but I'd love to know what anybody thought. The sexual harassment training, Judy, for some reason, I know you've done it. I saw it come through. Oh, you did not do it? Oh, okay, then.
I haven't done it. I've done it for the new school. I'm gonna have to do a different one for the library. I will do it.
Yeah, it's an online
It's
thing.
like, no, I mean,
Doesn't
it's
take
like,
much time.
it's 3 hours for the, you know, like each of them has to be done. So I'm doing them.
This would take you 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's not long.
Yeah.
Vicki, did mine come through? I did it, but it
Yeah.
just sort of stopped at the end. And so I wasn't sure if I had crashed or not.
Yes, yes. I think that everybody is done then.
Okay.
Yes, we're fine. So the winter programming, let me see. The things that we're doing with the Historical Society is a real easy kind of program, and people seem to really like it. I mean, it doesn't have 25 people, but we have 5 or 6 people each time that are going to that, different people. And so I just wanted to put a plug in for that program and how easy that program was for us. Anne Marie is another program. Anne Marie does Zumba. She would like to do something this winter with us, and just and it's a free program. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to do that. So we're waiting for approval for that one. And the other groups.
Sorry, who are you waiting for approval from?
The board or you or anybody? Anybody okay with that? Yeah. It's just a real easy, piece of cake, the Zoom stuff. And yeah. And people would really like to stay active, sort of. Okay, thank you. Memoir group is still
just what I'm sorry, one quick last question. Is that in person in the lower level of the library?
No, we're not doing it no, that's too active. That would be Zoom. Bless you.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
We all heard it. Okay, let me see where Memoir group, Knitting with Sandy, both of those are Zoom. The Knitting with Sandy sometimes is in person, and they keep distance and they're all doing their things. I got a Columbia County Library Association meeting tomorrow. No, on Friday. Tomorrow I meet with the executive committee, and I hope, we'll go through. I'm concerned the data that I'm not going to get the data that I need for submitting the annual report. That's going to be difficult without having Christy to pull those numbers together.
Oh.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
All right.
Is that the squeaky toy from the dog? That must be it. Figured it out. Now I know.
I don't know why, but when I'm talking on the phone, she thinks it's time to play. Maybe because the only other time I'm talking is I'm talking to her.
So I just thought Abby Wood, thank you, Kim, for that referral, is a senior from Ichabod Crane, and she did her community service hours here. So she came in and filled in Thursday. She says she's going to come back, but people say a lot of things. And, she was great here, though. She was very useful. Yeah, so that was really nice. And again, if you have any ideas about people that might want to do a 2-hour shift, it would be nice to be training somebody else and get some. We have an opening really on Thursday. It could be, or we do 4 to 7 on Thursday. So any time in there. But I can.
And what is the job description for those 2 or 3 hours?
This is really working inside the library in the circulation desk. I would teach them to check in, check out. They won't be left alone, putting books away, pulling holds, things, dealing with patrons right there. But I will be right here the whole time that they're here. And that allows me to get some work done. If I don't have somebody at the front desk, then I'm really up there. I'm not back here.
Okay.
You said something
good to know.
interesting, Vicki, which is, and actually the combination of, Kim having found someone from the high school who could come in. Is this something that could be turned into, does it have enough interest for a high school student to actually be something that someone could sign up for a semester?
They usually have, for some of their government classes or something, they have a small 10-hour commitment. And sometimes people will show up because of that. But except for Rowan, who really stayed for those 3 years, most kids don't stay. Of course, that went on his resume for college, and that was certainly part of it. Mia Briffa, who was here for a long time, had that same motivation. It wasn't just, I love being in the library, but I'm going to put this on my resume and that'll help me get into college. And it worked both places.
Is there anything we can do, and I'm not necessarily thinking about money, but is there anything we can do to actually make it sufficiently interesting for them beyond the check in, check out, put it on your resume, that they'd feel like they were learning something so that they'd actually kind of want to show up? Or conversely, what was it that made Rowan want to continue to show up? Was there something in there that made it sweet for him?
He was busy the whole time and he likes books. So you're interacting with people up front. You are learning about the library, and it isn't just sitting there. It's really getting up and moving around, finding the books that for the holds that people are asking for, putting things away. It could also be things like doing the sign outside, or it's also simple things like making copies of flyers that need to go out.
I have an idea. I don't know who would follow through on this, but when you mention those things, it seems to me that a good point person in a school for finding that would be the high school guidance counselor, number one, who knows the kids and knows who's looking for college, and also maybe the English teachers who know, which students really like books.
That might be a good idea. I know when we were looking for volunteers when we were trying to do Books and Blooms in the fall, Bonnie Rothenberg, who was our fantastic volunteer coordinator for that event, got in touch with the teachers who are the advisors for the National Honor Society, which is one of the big places because you have to do volunteer work every year in order to qualify for the National Honor Society. Of course, you want that on your resume when you're applying to college. And the feedback she got from one of those advisors is, I don't even tell kids about stuff until January. I was like, wow, how does that help your community? I was aghast, absolutely aghast by that. So doing an end run around them is a great idea.
They are very busy. Kids are very busy. So there's, I didn't hear the whole thing you said there though, Kim. They didn't tell them until their junior year. Is that what you said?
No, they didn't tell them at all. He said, I don't let them know about these things until January.
Until January. Oh,
yeah. Now, like Gunnar, Abby, they both did early decision. So they're done with their applications. I think he's thinking about, things right before they apply and stuff, but it was like, this is supposed to be community support, and that is not supportive.
Right.
Well, he happens to be one of Gunnar's teachers, so
I would reach out to Bonnie.
Respond.
And see, to Bonnie Rothenberg, who you're talking about, and see if she'd be willing to contact the guidance counselors about that, about community service.
We do need to be careful about that. Bonnie helps with Books and Blooms. She's not the library's volunteer coordinator.
Oh, I understand that, but she's also on my committee for the arts, as you know.
I know, yes.
And so she could also say no.
Yeah, yes. So as long as she understands that.
And also there isn't the pressure, when you're looking for Books and Blooms, she probably felt like she had to find somebody. This is hoping to find
God,
somebody.
yes. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I freaked out.
Julia,
you've seen it,
What?
If she's not interested at all, let me know and I'll reach out too. I mean, those are good ideas.
Okay, good.
Worth a phone call.
Good.
So, let's see. The web page, you know, I've gotten some nice feedback on the web page, and I don't see Linda here tonight either, but I had somebody come in today and talk to me and say, I like how it's clean. I like how it looks, you know, and I can find things. So that was nice. It was really nice to hear. But also working with Trevelyan still. Actually, am not aware of what it's costing us. So I'd sort of like to see that. Dottie had all that stuff, and I don't know what our ongoing commitment to them was. But the events go through them. I do the blog, new book selections. We'll change that out this month. There'll be new ones, homepage spotlight. That'll be something I do to tell them. And I mean, they're very, very, very particular about how it's done. And that gets it on there exactly the right way. And there's nothing wrong with that.
We do need to figure out, I don't know how we can get this information, but we need to figure out the monthly costs for the service. Is it based on, you know, an assumption of so many hours? What happens when we go over that budgeted amount? I know we went over the budget to actually develop the website by quite a bit. So I want to be mindful of how, you know, our monthly allocation is and how that's working out.
Can I ask a question that builds on that? Dottie did that in her capacity as chair of the marketing committee. She's not on the board, but is she still chair of the marketing committee? And is she still in that position, or has that vaporized?
That vaporized.
Question. Oh, dear.
No, Dottie's gone. We don't have a marketing committee anymore, as nearly as I can tell.
What do you mean? Linda Morawski's on it, I thought, right?
But there's no chair, there's no meetings, there's no agendas.
Well, we finished up the whole big thing. So I mean, there would be a time that we didn't need to meet, thank goodness, since we spent a couple hours every single week. But I mean, that's a great idea. Can Dottie still do it?
Marketing is important. I mean,
yeah,
if Linda could chair it and Dottie could serve on it, we definitely need to have marketing.
Does it need to be a board member who chairs a committee?
Yes.
It does?
The bylaw person says no.
I don't remember. That was 2 years ago, but I thought we were certainly able to have non-board members on committees, and I don't know why it would need to be a board person who's chair.
But the bylaws don't require a board person to be a chair, but it's been our best practice. You know, it's been a best practice of ours.
Well, I would agree with Randy. We can't just disband the marketing committee,
right?
At all.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to nominating and governance, and you know, as you can see, we're short on board members, and we've lost a bunch of board members recently, and it's a problem. You know, it's a big problem for us, and it's going to be a big problem through the rest of tonight's agenda. So it's got, you know, we're going to have to somehow turn that around.
So here's a question. Is Dottie still on the marketing committee or not?
No idea.
I don't think she knows.
She's still on this long range plan committee.
I think she said to me she wanted to still keep her committee activities.
I thought so too. She said that to me too.
Okay. All right. I obviously need to have a conversation with Dottie, and it's now on my to-do list.
Okay.
And if there's some way you can find out what our fee structure is with Trevelyan.
Well, I think it's obvious, Randy, it's $100 an hour that they charge.
Yeah, it's an hourly rate. It's not like a fixed rate on a monthly basis. It's an hourly rate, whatever it is.
And it was $95, and they've just because I'm a client of theirs, they've just recently increased it to $100 an hour.
Okay, then Vicki.
And
we need to keep track of the hours. You know, I'm nervous because the development of the website took twice as long as what was budgeted. And actually, Suzanne even said it was longer than that, longer than twice as long. But so, you know, we really have to have a streamlined process. We can't have a lot of back and forth. Stuff just goes to her. She posts it. You know, I'm kind of brainstorming here, but I'm nervous about that cost.
This is not, so the amount of work, so we're budgeted for 10 hours a month.
No, we can't, not at $100 an hour, you're not.
I think we did that through the building process of the library, but we'll have to check this out. And this is, again, a problem of not having a treasurer and somebody who's aware of what's coming in and what's going out. So,
okay, we'll chat with Buddy. Dottie definitely has the detail on what the billing arrangement was with Trevelyan, so she can give you an easy answer on that one. But then you do need a point person who's monitoring it on a monthly basis. And also, I believe there was a red flag on the play kind of deal with them, which is that after X number of hours, probably about 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours, they were going to let us know. So we need to have a point person who gets that information, that we just used up our time, you know, as much as we had budgeted, because I don't remember, it's been built into the budget, but I believe Christy built in a pretty low number. And, you know, so we're going to want to watch it pretty carefully.
All right, I will have this conversation with Dottie and report back to the board in an email. But in the meantime, Vicki can give us a heads up about, since the website has gone up, how much interaction have you had to have with Trevelyan? Because the way we tried to set it up was that you just provided the content without having to go back and forth with them over it.
Right. The only thing we went back and forth over was the calendar, which turned out, you know, just to be some things she wanted submitted as an event. So that was, you know, just a couple emails, but everything else has been one email with all the information to her. And
yeah. So that's good. That sounds like that's working out. All right. So I will follow up on this and get back to the board after my conversation with Dottie.
Okay. Geez. Oh, I'd really like to know about books that you guys are reading and that you're liking. I mean, I really, now that we're using a more dynamic approach to the website, especially, excuse me, and getting books and things on there. I mean, I have 6 I'll put on there every, occasionally. And I'd like to know what you're reading that you've liked. So I wish you would, you know, be more active about sending something to me saying, I really did like this book, especially newer books. You know, we'll try to go with that. Old books are great too, but that would be helpful to me.
Okay.
I can't read them all. There's no way. Excuse me. Items for the blog posts. You know, if you have things in the community that are going on, again, I'm just reminding you, as Dottie had laid it out, that's good. So 2 more things, I guess. Looking forward, annual report is going to open up in just a couple days. And that's going to take, you know, my focus right there. I'm going to have eventually somebody within this next month is going to have to do some financial stuff from QuickBooks to put in there. And the last thing, I guess we're in discussion with the executive board there about the library taking on a greater piece of the ELIC and trying to work that out so that that doesn't fall through either. Oh, and I'll end on a high note. You know, that annual appeal that you sent out has generated a lot of new people coming into the library.
Yes.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, it must just woken them up to, again, that, you know, we're here, and that's been wonderful.
Did these new people register as, get like a library card? They didn't have one before?
That's how I'm judging that they're new people.
Great.
That's great. And I have to say that the letter was really well written.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Let's put off the finance committee. Linda said she was going to join, but she said she would join late. There's no one else that's on the finance committee on the meeting at the moment.
I'm on the finance committee, but I have no information to share. I have nothing.
Okay.
I'm on the finance committee as well, and I'm looking for the Christy was generous and kind enough to send us the financials. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. And hopefully Linda does come on the call at some point and is able to give us the, okay, and I can't find it now, but, and give us the big picture on the library's finances. So I will also try to find that email from Christy with the finances. So, okay, now let me go back. I have to tell you, I really dislike electronic meetings. I'm just scrolling between screens all the time and it's very awkward. All right, so where are we in?
Now we're on fundraising, and I'll do the fundraising.
All right, Dale couldn't join us tonight?
No, he couldn't. We've made roughly, and this is me tallying the amounts from the thank you letters that I've written. I could tell you from the thank you letters that we have got like about 62 or so donations, totaling $4,435. Yeah, that's just me adding up those numbers. It's not a formal bookkeeper.
What was that dollar amount again?
4,435. And they've pretty much slowed down. We're maybe getting 2 a week, Vicki, right?
Yes. I didn't get any today. Okay. There were 2 yesterday. So maybe a few more than that. It's been a couple. We'll see.
How does that compare to last year?
About half.
Yeah, I don't expect it to bring in as much as the one did last year at this point. At this point last year, we were, it was obvious that we were going to raise close to 10,000, and we're not going to make that number this year on the appeal.
Let me go on then, unless is there any other discussion on that? So,
would it be wise to have 2 appeals during this year?
Yes.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I think the appeal letter should just go out earlier.
Yeah.
You know, we have the fundraising committee should address this, but there's no reason that we couldn't, and it also depends on what ends up happening with a 414, but there's no reason not to send 2 appeal letters a year in terms of outreach to the community. The only from my perspective, I should say, the only reason not to is because the fundraising committee, you know, is not wanting to take on that load.
No, I would look at it differently. I think, you know, everyone is used to getting a year-end letter, and I forget Giving Tuesday is November, which I don't get I frankly have a hard time with Giving Tuesday in November and then the appeals in December. I do know a lot of organizations with June 30th years wind up doing 2 appeals because they do the year end and they do the summertime one. I would feel more comfortable, you know, the appeal letter in December is an appeal letter. It would be really nice, as opposed to always it sounding like an ask, even though if it is an ask, if we think through what's going on with the activities of the library, and I know there's some number coming up that are on the fundraising committee's calendar that are kind of fun things to do. And I think rather than billing it simply as an appeal letter, we've got all this cool stuff coming up. We've got the tea tasting, we've got the vegetable tour, we've got, I don't remember what else. But I think here, part of it is reaching out to the community and constantly reminding people what we do in the community. And it's obviously harder during COVID because a lot of things we do, we can't do. But I'm not objecting to a fundraising letter per se, but I think I'd prefer it in the context of this is what we're doing for all of you. Come get engaged and please, you know, join us, contribute, et cetera, et cetera. It's not going to be a big fundraiser, but it, you know, it reminds people to write a check maybe, whether they show up and participate or whether they just write a check.
So you're basically saying, come join us, have a good time, support the library at the same time. And if you're unable to join us, here's the thing where you can write a check.
Exactly.
That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Well, we did that.
And better yet, do both.
We did that for the when we were having our nice cocktail party. We always asked people to contribute.
Yeah.
If they could come. Yeah.
Yep. So, okay. So maybe Randy and Kim can take that back to the fundraising committee as they think about the next appeal letter.
Let me just say one thing about what's going to be the next fundraiser, which is sometime around Valentine's. I have to work it out with the person who's actually doing the tea tasting. It's going to be close to Valentine's. It'll be a tea tasting and pairing with chocolate. The tea company my neighbor owns, or is a co-owner of a company called In Pursuit of Tea. They're really nice teas that she gets locally sourced. She has maybe about 100 varieties of loose teas. It's a pretty big company. And so she's offered to do the tea tasting for free and donate the teas. So I went to the chocolate shop in Lenox over the weekend and picked up chocolate samples. I brought them back to her house. And so she's pairing teas with chocolates. We'll put that package together. Betsy Winters Russell and Dottie are helping me. They're my helpers on this fundraising effort, but we'll put together a bag of the teas and the chocolates. We'll charge people $30. It'll be $30 sort of like per household. And we'll make about 20 for each tasting. And we'll cap it at $30. So we'll make $600 out of this fundraising if we get 30 people to participate. So they would pick up the bags. We can, if Vicky's concerned about, you know, having the bags there and being interrupted during the day, Betsy has offered to sit at the library for a specified period of time, like we did for the wreaths. And then people could come and pick them up. And if they didn't pick them up, I could try to deliver them. So we'll see how this goes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's great.
Good. Yeah, I'm getting good interest. I think I already have 3 people who are interested outside of the nods that I'm seeing here tonight.
I'm going to sign up. I'll help you too if you need help.
Thanks. Well, what I could use help with is the bulb fundraiser in the spring, and I'm already
I'll help you with that. Yeah,
Great.
I think you can name that. Yeah.
Feeling a little bit stressed about being the host of 3 fundraisers. After that, I'll have the garden tour. But the bulb one should actually be much easier. The way it'll work is we'll pick a company, and I've got 3 in mind. I can send those to you, Liz, and you can help me pick them up. And then people will order from the company directly and get the bulbs shipped directly to them. although it's called a spring bulb fundraiser, it's bulbs that get planted in the spring and come up in the summertime. It's not spring bulbs that pop up in the spring. So, I like this idea because it's a range of prices. If you don't want to spend a lot of money, you don't have to spend a lot just to get a few bulbs. So, and it's 50% profit. They do really all the work. So.
That's great.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully
Cool.
that'll work as well as the wreaths did.
Yeah. So that's all I have on the fundraising.
I have one thing to say about money. I don't know exactly when to say this. I went to get some Clink stickers the other day. I have to get some new ones because they didn't print right. They were running out of ink. But it says we have $680 in there now. So we can think of, if we need some money for something, we can go and get some of that. I've never taken it out. I started it and it's just been growing and growing, but it's $680 now.
What is this,
Cool.
Liz? I'm not familiar with it.
You get, I get these bags from Hannaford's, and I set up an account for the library, and I get these stickers and I put them on the bags, and I think Vicki sometimes does it too. And then we leave them in the library and people take them and you fill them up with your bottles and you take them to the Clink place at Hannaford's and scan them in and we get the money. So we've got $680 now.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it is. It's been a couple of years, but still it's now it's a good amount of money. So
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not much work at all either. So that's a great way.
That's
Yeah.
great.
I don't have any thoughts about when to collect it, but let's bring that to the finance committee and they'll probably just say, grab it.
Yeah, I'm thinking we should, take it out and do something with it. Not let it sit there for too long. And I don't know, I haven't done any of that yet. I don't know whether they write us a check. I hope they're not going to give me cash. I would imagine they're going to write a check, but whatever. And there is like a log on and a password, and it should be in a folder at the library where you can go and check the account too. And I have a copy of it here someplace. But I have a little tag I can scan at the library to get the stickers. And I'm assuming I would use the same tag to ask for the money.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to throw that one to the finance committee for their next meeting.
Rick, the next item is the marketing committee. And I put some notes in here about things that we said previously about the marketing committee, that we need to keep this going, basically.
All right. Well, like I said, I'm not up to speed on what Dottie's thinking about the marketing committee, but I'm obviously going to ask her to continue to chair that. And I know Linda's on it. I know Lindy is also on it. And I will report back to the committee on this. So I don't see any notes that you have, Randy, in the agenda I'm looking at.
I just entered in the discussion that we had when we were going through the director's report.
For the minutes.
Yes, in the minutes. Just that we need to have a better understanding of the billing arrangement with Trevelyan. And we need to keep this committee going.
Okay. All right. Building and grounds.
You got to call.
I
You got
have
to
a
request.
request.
Yep.
I have a request of the marketing committee. And this is something that Dottie's familiar with. In working with the long range plan and thinking about the 414, what we really need, and I think we can grab a lot of it from the website, but somebody has to be able to put this together. We need a brochure, a simple brochure that lists things that the library offers so that when we go knock on doors and talk to people about why they should support the library, we can just give this to them and then they sign the petition and we get on the ballot and we raise money for the library. But in the process of knocking on doors, we also talk to people about what services they think, where the gaps are for them, you know, what they really enjoy about the library and what they'd like to see. And so we begin to understand a little more about who's underserved. So anyway, just putting it out there because it seems like a brochure would fit under the marketing committee.
Julie, isn't that what Linda did for us last year? And I think she updated it this year too, but I'm not sure.
Rick
Ah,
seems to has something in hand.
Is that what Rick has in his hand?
Yeah, exactly.
14, we designed that when we were doing the 414.
nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Will it
So
need?
this, it looks fairly up to date. It might, we might need to deal with the colors to make it pop a little more, but yeah.
Great. I forgot about
Stop
that.
Stop by the library and get one because it's very well done. It's got this beautiful painting by of the library by Randy's mother, you know, and it says books are only the beginning. Discover all the resources your library has for you. I think it's very well done.
Great.
So yes, I agree. This is a great leave behind for when that time comes. And in the meantime, maybe we should produce more and every board member should have some so they can hand them out to people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, it was probably 2 years ago, Julie, that we did it. When we were going to do the 414, we did it.
Someone needs to take a look at how many we have left in inventory and whether we need to update it, you know, and what printing costs would be and that kind of thing. I mean, there's a little bit of work to be done just to make sure it's.
Yeah, I've got it on my list for the marketing committee here. So, okay. Mark, buildings and grounds. And I'll just preface this by saying, and you're still muted, Mark, but I'll preface this by saying I talked to Mark about the fact that we are just going to have to deal with the we're going to have to contract out to somebody to fix up the ramp as soon as the weather allows, because it really is in ratty condition. And it does not, it's not a good first impression as you walk up to the library. It's not worthy of this painting by Randy's mother. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that I asked Vicki to price out new furniture for her area so that it looks much more professional than it does currently. So a new desk, a new cabinet, and whatever else was needed to professionalize the library director's quote unquote office. Mark, do you have anything else for us?
No, I would just add that we're still waiting on that energy assessment. We contacted him and I guess his report has to go to the state in some manner and he's waiting to get it back from them, he says. And when he does that, at some point we should see that and we'll pick that up and run with what they advise. And I am working presently on trying to get some contractors to talk to me about that ramp issue as soon as we can get at it in the late spring, early summer.
All right.
And maybe volunteers too, but that tends to be a difficult ask. It's hard to get the volunteers, but I'll work it and see how it goes. That's it.
Yeah, and we tried the volunteer approach already. You know, it's probably worth another run at it, but I just wouldn't count on it being what it takes to get it done.
Yeah, I would say it's unlikely to work out.
Okay. All right. And Mark, the capital plan, or what did we name that thing that you and Mary worked on? The not capital, but long-term maintenance of the library.
Right, you still have that. It was never presented, so you and I need to talk because you said you had some changes or alterations or something new.
Oh, it stalled with me. Sorry about that.
Right.
is there any chance you could resend that to me?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. All right, anything for Mark? No? Hearing
Julie,
nothing,
does that answer one of the questions that you had?
I think I'll still bring the question up.
Okay, great.
Do you want to do that now?
No, I'd rather do it in the context of, unless you want me to.
I don't know what the question or the context is, so I
context is the long range plan. I think it makes more sense.
All right, great. Let's leave it there then. All right, Arts and Culture Subcommittee, and in your agenda, Randy and Julie have laid out all the upcoming programs.
Well, not all of them. Can I read what I wrote? And
yeah,
I'm going to a document, so I'm not going to see all of you while I'm doing this. Okay. So I'll just read it. That most dates are in place for 2022. We received $1,000 for one grant that I wrote, and we're waiting to hear about the second grant, but expect to get at least most of it. And we are hoping to offer 8 programs during the year. Here's a description of the first 2. And the first program of the year should be of interest to ELIC as well, since it relates to climate change, but it's from a very broad perspective. And the first program on March 27th will be John Feldman, who's a filmmaker, giving us a sneak preview of his new film, Regenerating Life: How to Cool the Planet, Feed the World, and Live Happily Ever After. A question I wrote in the grant proposal was, how can we humans meet the challenge of climate change realistically? Is it possible to have hope in the face of impending disaster? And as we get closer, we'll decide if we can have this indoors. And just to know, the film's now in post-production. It'll be at the final cut stage in March, and John will engage the audience in a discussion about the central thesis of the film, which is that given the political will, we humans do have the means to restore the Earth's water cycles and thus cool the planet over just a matter of decades. And he's traveled and talked to people in India and other countries, people who are sort of at the on the front lines and around our country too, who are doing really interesting things with water and soil. So that's the first program. And the second program relates to the book that Vicki showed you at the very beginning. It's April 10th. It'll be indoors at the Malden Bridge Community Center. We've already reserved space where Judy Staber, will read selections from her newly published biographical memoir about her mother, Rise Above It, Darling, the story of Joan White, actor, director, teacher, producer, and sometimes mother. And this is how Judy describes it. She grew up in an actor's orphanage in England. So she says, quote, I was born during World War II to an actress mother and a theater manager father in London. At war's end, father left the family, and my sister Susanna and I were put in the actor's orphanage. I was 4 and Susanna 7. When I was 11, mother and Susanna emigrated to North America. After 12 years at the orphanage, I too went to America and entered the family business, the theater. So that's the first 2 of our 8 programs, and Judy is on the Arts and Culture Program Committee. So it's very special that we got funding to bring her to do a reading.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's it.
Very cool. Okay. You guys are on the ball once again. Very nice.
Thank you.
All right. ELIC has upcoming programs, and maybe, Vicki, I don't know if you have them in front of you. I can pull them up on my small screen here, but if you have the ability to just give us I think there are 3 scheduled between now and the summer, right?
We have Heat Smart is in February. And I don't have the dates for anything else after that. I didn't have your dates, Julie, until just now.
I'm going to send
if
you
we
a
want
list.
them on the website.
I have them somewhere up on my desk, and I apologize for not having them in front of me. I will get them to Randy so that they can be part of the minutes of this meeting. Okay.
I wish you'd get them to me. I don't have the dates for anything after the Heat Smart. They were all to be determined. In March.
The ELIC, there's an ELIC meeting on the 18th, so of this month. So we'll know that
March
by then.
Capital Region Prism, Know Before You Grow, April Columbia Land Conservancy, and then a native plants some May or June. That's all I've got.
Okay, so we know the months, but not the specific dates. Is that what it's coming down to?
Right.
All right, I managed to grab this.
Vicki, are you part of the ELIC meeting that's taking place on the 18th? Because that
I will be there. Yeah.
Okay, great. Then that'll help you get the details you need.
I will be there too.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what I have as well.
Okay.
In March, they're going to do Know Before You Grow with the Capital Region Prism, which I used to know what Prism stood for, but it's essentially a group of professionals working on invasive species control. And it has state funding, and it has Nature Conservancy funding and staffing. And there's regional prisms all over the state. So it's a DEC program that draws in experts from across the field. And then there's going to be the Columbia Land Conservancy Stream and Pond Nature Walk at the Siegel Klein Kill, which is down in Ghent, during school break. And then sometime in May, native plants and beneficial insects. So, and the other ELIC news is that I'm working on, and I've got to have one of them in by Saturday. I'm working on the annual report to the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation for their funding of the 2021 ELIC programs. And which are those that we just read off, by the way, how to be more eco-friendly. And then I'm getting into the Bank of Greene County by Saturday, a grant request for this coming year. Okay. So all on my desk, all on my to-do, all in various stages of development.
So Rick, the fund for Columbia County, that's usually due in February, I think. Are you working on that? Is that what you're working on?
Well, I can't do anything with that until after the ELIC meeting on the 18th. So it's going to be a tight schedule.
Yeah. I'm not sure of their grant deadline, but it used to be February, early in February.
I believe that's what I have as well. Hold on. You know what? It might be in this stack of paper I have, but it might also not be.
Well, that's okay. As long as you know.
I'm aware that it's coming up faster than I want it to. That's for certain. All right. All right. Moving. Anything else on ELIC? Vicki? Anybody? Okay. Julie, thank you for
one question. There was an ELIC program this week, right? Marketing and selling, or buying and selling on the internet. How did that go?
It went very well.
Okay.
Yeah, it involved having 2 trials, as far as, we have to get together with the person and practice doing it. using the technology and stuff. So we had to do that twice instead of once. And then it went okay. It had some glitches, but it was well received. So
how many people attended?
28.
Great, good.
Yeah,
that's a big number. That's terrific.
Not as big as some of Julie's programs, but yeah, that was it. Buying and selling was a hot topic.
That's awesome. And Maureen Gardner does that, so everybody know, who presents on that. Because the clothing barn at the church, the North Chatham Methodist Church, has not really been able to be open during COVID, she's turned around and been selling all that stuff on eBay very successfully, as it turns out, which is nice to know for the church as well.
Yeah.
All right, let me find this agenda again.
And that moves into long range plan nicely with Julie reporting on church stuff.
There we go. All right, Julie, you're up.
Okay, and I want to say, Judy and Kathleen, apologies to you that, you know, Dottie got really involved with you're on the committee, and she got really involved with the website. So we will be continuing to meet about the long range plan. But here's what I came up with. That Dottie, Mark, and I are planning to visit the church, and we will be doing that soon, to see about using the downstairs for programs and meetings. But we still have to make a plan for that. And we're talking on next Monday, I think, about the church. And then I thought, when I responded to Randy to say that I would give a report on the long range planning, that it might be good on a regular basis to bring up a couple of questions to the board and get input and volunteers for various tasks as we're working on updating the plan. So I've done that with just a couple of items here. So the first goal has to do with programs, outreach, and service. I won't read you the goals, but the questions that I think we need answers to, and that we might discuss, are these. What are the demographics of our catchment area? Now, obviously, we're not going to solve that tonight. And who are the underserved? The question is, in terms of the demographics and the underserved, how do we begin to find out? Where do we do the research? How do we find out? Does any other of our board members have an idea? So I'm going to come back from my little thing. Let's just brainstorm a little bit, because as we're working on these things, you know, there are actions that need to be taken, and I think our little committee can't answer all these questions, and I thought just throwing it out to the board might be a good idea. So how do you get the data on the demographics?
I think I pulled the data for Dottie when she was doing the long range plan. It comes from the census. And the one problem, though, is that the town of Chatham is basically one census tract, because census tracts are roughly 4,800 people. If I can find data at the census block group level, which is smaller, and maybe figure out how many, what block groups make up our catchment area, I might be able to get census data that would be restricted to just our catchment.
Well,
so
the first,
were you going to describe the catchment, Rick?
I was going to say, I have no idea how to define the catchment area.
The catchment is the town of Chatham minus the Chatham School District.
That is such a small territory and population that, one, you're just not going to find data at that small of an area, and two, it means that we are essentially there's no point to that data because it's so small. I mean, literally, I'm talking about 1,000 people.
I know.
Do you want to do all this work to find 1,000 people?
Well, I think it's maybe try it a different way as opposed to talking or focusing on census data. When we had started the conversation around the long-term plan, and I think we used the term catchment area, who are the people, and it's two different questions. Who are the people who geographically use our library? And number two, what is the area that would be covered for purposes of a 414, meaning who can actually vote on whether or not we can get more money? And they're both, I think, relevant questions. And I don't think it's an overlap. I mean, there's an overlap, but they're not identical areas. And my guess is neither of them is exactly identical to the town of Chatham, less the village of Chatham.
No, the 414 is the town of Chatham, including the village portion. That's straightforward.
Okay.
It's every resident in the town, or every registered voter in the town of Chatham, including those that live in the village portion. So the 414 is, and Judy, if you don't know, the village of Chatham, 70% of it is in Ghent, not Chatham.
But don't they have their own library in the village of Chatham?
Yes.
So why would they be? I understand. So why would they be part of our I'm not sure we have to hash it out here, but we do have to get clarity about what is our 414 area, and then how does that intersect with the people who actually use the library?
Well, Judy.
Okay, they don't overlap a whole lot.
Okay.
Well, Rick, you're saying catchment and 414 are two different groups. It's a Venn diagram with overlap. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. And there's not a lot of overlap between the 414 and the people who take advantage of the library. The vast majority of people who will be voting on our 414 think of the Chatham Library as their library. And the state defines that as their library, by the way.
And weren't we using some voting records for the 414?
Yes.
Because we had started to get them time.
Yes. So the reason we were asking the question, though, from the point of view of the long-range plan and not the 414, was because we're trying to think of who are the underserved, where are the gaps in the services that we provide. You know, why are people not coming to the library? What could we be doing that might bring them in? Would they come anyway? You know, I mean, do you know what I mean? That in order to sort of provide the community that we're supposed to serve with you know, the services that are needed, are there gaps? That's really why we're asking this question, isn't it, Judy, Kathleen?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and I think these are great questions, and I think defining the questions further and exploring for answers is exactly the right thing to do. I just think that the political boundaries that define us are not a help. They're a hindrance to deciding and defining those.
Yeah.
Okay. But
does that make sense?
That makes sense. But then where do we get, you know, do we need to get data? Do we just guess? I mean, one of the things, for instance, we talked about is our library does not really provide very many, if any, services to teenagers. But other libraries in the area might be doing what's needed, and they might have more teenagers than we have. You know, who are we supposed to be serving, is etc. It's that kind of question, I think.
Well, no, it's not who are we supposed to, because the state says we're not supposed to be servicing Judy Albert or Christy Sadowski. It's who do we want to serve? Okay. Because we can't live, if we lift political boundaries, whether it's the state library system or it's the political boundaries that go along with voting. Like I said, we're well under 1,000 people. And they're very easy to find. You could literally just drive up and down the streets and see who the heck they were, or follow a school bus and see how many teenagers get on it. So we have to be broad-minded about that. And I don't know that you can collect data to do, hard data from these political institutions to do that. Probably the closest you can get is as small down as the census blocks go.
Okay.
But so I think that, I think the long range planning group ought to, instead of asking who are we supposed to be supporting, the broader question is who do we want to be supporting, because we can ignore those boundaries.
Okay.
Let me ask, can I just glom on here for a second, a question for Vicki. Is it possible to do a geographic mapping of the folks who are card holders and people who are actually participating in our programming, so that we at least know who at the moment we are servicing as a starting point?
Be way above my abilities.
You don't get an address when people sign up for a card. You don't get an address.
I do.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but to map that, we would need somebody with GIS skills.
And Mid-Hudson doesn't have anything like that. I mean, this is just data that. Nope.
Mid-Hudson thinks that we serve North Chatham and part of Malden Bridge.
Old Chatham.
Part of Old Chatham.
A rough idea is to, do you have the patron information in an Excel spreadsheet, Vicki?
No, I don't.
Can it be downloaded and put into an Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
It can be, we could summarize by zip code. The one problem with the 12184 zip code is it's technically Galatia.
Yep.
Yeah, that's zip codes are actually our.
We would understand people from coming in from Nassau, coming in from Kendrick by the zip codes.
You begin to get a picture. It wouldn't be a perfect picture. It would be pretty spotty, but you begin to get a picture. I'm just saying, I think to the point that Julie was raising, and I'll at least take your point, Rick, which is who do we want to be servicing? But at least understanding right now what's kind of our natural geographic range would be a starting point, because then you can say, who within that natural geographic range are we not seeing in the library? Are there communities that there clearly are people coming in to use the services, but it's a scattershot kind of thing? Well,
and it's gotten, and our service distribution has gotten even more broadly defined with Zoom.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, Vicki tells me we have people signing into Zoom sessions from Texas.
Good.
And Europe.
And Europe, yeah, there you go. So this has always been a conundrum for us, and but I do think it's the right series of questions. It's just a matter of how can you get some alignment with the political boundary realities, because the Postal Service is the worst with zip codes. School districts are political boundaries, that were drawn 60 years ago, back in the 70s, and they haven't changed one iota since the 70s. So, and then in terms of the 414, the legislature set it up by towns. And again, that just doesn't work for the way our library works. And Mid-Hudson and the New York State Library System are insistent that our geographic territory is itty bitty, when we know that's not the on the ground reality. So
all right.
This is a jigsaw puzzle, and the long range planning committee has got a challenge on that front. But they're the right questions to be asking and seeking answers to.
I just want to make
I wish I had better direction for you on that.
Yeah.
one tiny clarification there. Mid-Hudson has nothing to do with designing what our service area is. It all comes from the Department of Education.
Yeah,
they're just an organizing unit is what they are.
They're just the implementers of that. That's correct.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for all that. Let me see. There was something else, I think, for Mark in terms of the questions. Thank you, everyone. Oh, okay. There was skills development and training. So Dottie says that the Mid-Hudson Library System offers trainings regarding reaching out to the underserved. I will look into that. But also we want to keep up with trainings and wondering which other Mid-Hudson Library System trainings are particularly relevant to our library. Is there anybody who wants to volunteer to look into that?
Well, I think maybe the thing to do is to just invite Casey or Rebecca from Mid-Hudson to one of our meetings to talk about that.
Ah.
That, you know, and that way we cut out a middle step.
Right, right. And if we're doing it on Zoom, it's easy for them.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
I did give, well, I'm sorry. Can I just say one more little thing? There was Project Outward is really about doing that strategic planning. And I think I sent some stuff to Dottie, who I think forwarded it to Kathleen and Judy about, I mean, it's you know, it's a cohort of people that are going to be working on strategic plans. I mean, they have a whole way of helping you. That is the kind of stuff that Mid-Hudson does, is help us be a better library. They help organize and they provide lots of training. So they have resources to help with that. Okay. And not just stuff for you to read, but to get together with Casey and Rebecca and stuff.
Great. All right, thank you. One last thing from the long range plan, then you're gonna tell me to shut up. Okay.
This has been great. Thank you.
All right. This is a question for Mark that has to do with the buildings of grounds, which is the thing that Rick mentioned in the beginning. Is the capital plan up to date? And how and when will the capital plan be shared with the board? You don't have to answer that tonight, but it's something to think about and let us know. How and when are you going to share the plan with the board?
Wasn't it shared as part of the finance, is input to the budget process this year?
That's a good question.
I thought there was something we saw when we were going through it with Christy before it was actually submitted to the board, which included what Mark and Mary had worked on.
I gave Dottie the working copy with understanding the proviso that it was not presented, obviously. It was just our data as of a short year ago. So that's what you saw. And that's the same thing that I will be resubmitting to Rick. And then he had some ideas on it. And then I guess we take it from there.
Yeah, I apologize for dropping the ball on that. I'll turn that around right away.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, everybody.
All right, now I gotta go. Randy, I've lost the
executive committee is next.
So Dale, Randy, and I are meeting with Vicki tomorrow evening to set her goals and objectives for 2022. And yeah, that's where the executive committee is. Now, I want to say about the treasurer's position, because we didn't end up doing the finance committee. It looks like Linda's not going to be able to join us. I have been trying to set up a meeting with Christy and to talk about outsourcing the treasurer's job as much as possible. I have found it absolutely impossible to be able to recruit anybody to this position. Chrissy gave me the job description for it, and it's 20 items long. It's highly technical, and it is a major time commitment. And I'll be honest with you, I always knew that Chrissy did a lot of work for us and before her, but it's intimidating, and it is a major commitment. And unfortunately, the library is going to have to consider outsourcing that job and turning the treasurer's position into an oversight one, as opposed to an administrative one. And so I'm going to sit that as soon as I can, make it happen. And her schedule is proving to be impossible, but as soon as I can sit down with her, I will talk with her about how we take that to-do list, parse it out into oversight and implementation, which she thinks is possible and what isn't. And then I think we're going to have to go out and find somebody to define a position that we pay somebody to do the majority of that work. And I don't know whether we want to call it a comptroller or what, but for $110,000 a year budget, it's amazing how much work is required and how much work Christy was doing on our behalf. And I have scared off many a good person with that list. So, and I'm pretty much out of candidates at this point. So I just think we need a different business model, and it will cost us more money, but I think it's what we have to do. So, but I welcome all thoughts and input on that. And, I'll share around the list if people want to see it that Christy sent out. If it will help you think about it. So let me make a note to do that.
Rick, what does the Valatia and the Kinderhook libraries do in terms of treasure?
Oversight. The staff does the work.
The staff does the treasurer work?
Well, they don't call it
bookkeeping, reporting.
I know, I'm feeling the same way, Julie. That doesn't sound like good internal controls.
Well, I'm on the board of PS21. So we have a bookkeeper who's doing the bookkeeping function. There is a chief operating officer who oversees a lot of that. And then there is the treasurer is an oversight function. That's a board person. But the treasurer is not preparing any of the reports. They're reviewing, asking questions, but somebody else is actually doing the work.
Which is what I also expect that Kinderhook and Valatia are doing as well, that they're not asking their treasurers to do staff work, what would otherwise be staff work.
If they're hiring somebody, could we find out who they've hired?
Good idea.
I don't know. Yeah, I'll reach out to Kinderhook and Valatia on this. But I'm imagining that it's actually part of the staff's job description, at least in Kinderhook, where they have all that staff on hand, and Anna Lee Dragon is, the control freak.
But one of the points here, Rick, and it's a good one, a lot of the reporting is specific to the libraries and the Department of Education. It's not a standard nonprofit. And so someone who's familiar with that would be very helpful.
Vicki, I saw that you had your hand up. Was there something you wanted to add to the discussion?
Thanks, Randy. I was just going to speak as far as Valatia. Elizabeth has been there a lot of years, and she works with a board treasurer to prepare those reports. But she's had, and I don't remember the person's name, who'd been there a lot of years, and now they have a different one. So they're having more trouble. But that was still a board thing with Elizabeth. She was very involved in that.
Who is Elizabeth? Is Elizabeth the director?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. But she wasn't generating like the 990s.
Not the 990s. I mean, those kind of things really need to be done by somebody. I do. So I think that this board treasurer was doing that. When they did the annual report, Elizabeth would sit down with this person and just go through everything to get the numbers. But then the tax,
I actually imagine that, you know, we haven't done it. The treasurer has not done the 990 for a long time. We hired an outside firm years ago when Ann was treasurer, and that's a best practice. You don't necessarily want a volunteer or an amateur volunteer who's not a CPA doing your taxes.
Right. Right. One of the more immediate things is when we get money in here, who's picking up the money to make a deposit? I mean, that
is Dottie no longer doing that? I thought she said she was going to continue.
I don't know. She's not a board member anymore, and that's a board function, and then the treasurer or whoever is then reviewing those documents.
It's not a board function. It was just Dottie trying to relieve some pressure on the staff and the treasurer. But it doesn't require a board person. I mean, a deposit, anybody can make a deposit who we trust to make a deposit. It's, you know, it's just gathering and taking it to the bank.
I know that I think the rules, your rules or bylaws say I can't do that and say you can't do that. I think anybody else might be able to do it. I don't know. I thought it had to be a board, but
no,
I'm wrong.
No, the best practice is that the bookkeeper not do it. And don't forget, we also have a bookkeeper. So the best practice is that somebody who is not keeping the Quicken books make the deposits and report back. Could be anybody, as long as it's not the person who's keeping the books. And we do have Nancy Restifo doing the basic bookkeeping. But the fact that I'm a board member or the president or Dottie was a board member or that you're a staff person, doesn't matter. I actually imagine in Kinderhook that a staff person does the deposits, although they could literally just walk across the street if they're using Community Bank.
I could be wrong. I think it said I couldn't do it and you couldn't do it.
Who said that?
Wrong. I think that's written in the policy there.
Okay.
Our library policy?
I think so.
All right.
Well, the short answer is we do need somebody. So we, you know.
Right.
That makes no sense to me, but I'll try to look it up. If you know where that policy is, Vicki, please share it.
All right.
What bank do we use?
Bank of Greene County.
In Chatham?
Bank of, it doesn't matter. You can go to the branch in Valatia or Chatham for a deposit.
Vicki, do we have the mobile deposit available to us in that account? I mean, I haven't been to the bank to deposit a check in all of COVID. I just do it at home.
I don't make deposits. So what I do is get them here. I mean, I get the mail. I stamp them for deposit. And lately I've been making a copy of that. And then Dottie has the check and a copy. She makes the deposit. She prepares it. She goes to the bank. Those copies then go to Christy for review as a backup for the deposit. So
when does Randy get a copy for acknowledgements and thank yous?
I've been scanning the checks this, the last month. Well, that's usually when we get them. And Randy gets those immediately, and Dottie gets a copy of that image as well, with how many donations we have here waiting for her to come and get. Now, when we've done fundraisers, on a little sidelight thing, it had been the person who was in charge of the fundraiser. It was wine tasting. We just collected the money. We didn't deposit that. I didn't stamp it. It was all in an envelope for that person to check off their list that everybody had paid for it. So the fundraisers were always a little bit different. Books and Blooms. We didn't have that. I didn't have anything to do with that. Is that right, Randy? That's where you remember it. Yeah.
I've got a copy of the bylaws here about the deposit stuff.
Okay.
The treasurer shall receive, hold, and disperse all funds of the library under the direction of the Board of Trustees, shall deposit all monies of the corporation in the name and to the credit of the corporation in such depositories as designated by the board.
So it doesn't say it there. I don't know where I read. If I have obviously made a mistake, but if I find it, I'll pass it on.
Yeah, it wouldn't be in the bylaws. It would have to be a policy that we adopt.
Policy.
And I don't, it's been over a year since I went through the policy book, but I don't ever remember that. So saying that, that it couldn't be the library director or the president, it would actually make more sense if it said it couldn't be the treasurer. But I know that the best practices say that the person who keeps the books, in our case, the books are Quicken, should not be handling cash and deposits. All right, but we will continue to work on this and figure it out. All right, so you've got a backlog of deposits, in other words, Vicki.
No, we're pretty good. This is just early in the year, and the annual appeal really we only have 2. Is the short answer.
Okay, all right. Because I wasn't within the last couple of weeks, I saw a deposit email from Dottie. So maybe, maybe she is planning to continue it. But that's another question I'll have for her. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Let me see. Trying to get back to the agenda.
414.
Okay, Judy, you are.
Okay. So here's the question.
I will just give you the one quick update since our phone call. The Board of Elections is set to go for 2023 if need be. They will hold, there will be elections so to answer the question that we're talking about earlier.
Okay, so, recap, everything was all geared up to do a 414 in 2020. Diane Tucker was head of the committee. Liz and Linda were both on the committee. I think a number of you were actually on the committee. I think the question number 1 is, do we go for a 414 this year? The argument for going this year is it's going to be a congressional race, so there are going to be people showing up at the polls. Interestingly, a number of the libraries went last year when there actually wasn't all that much going on. There were some town races. I have no idea what's going to be in 2023. But I guess the question right now is, A, do we need the money now? And B, are we in a position where we feel comfortable that we have all our ducks lined up? Not in terms of the detail, the 414, but just in terms of the library structure and long-term plan and everything else, that we're ready to go out and launch a 414 for this November. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, if we do it, how much money do we want to raise? When it was considered back in 2020, the idea was the proposal was to ask for $35,000. We currently get $64,000 under the existing 414 that was done back in 2004. That's a big increase. It's a 50% increase. But it's also close to 20 years at this point since we last did it. Obviously, a little bit of work has to be done to figure out what the other libraries asked for. Relatively speaking, if we were to kind of baseline 2004, and they've continued to do them every year, so where are they relative to where they were? So we can at least make a rational argument if we want to go out for the 35K. 35K would bring us to $100,000 from the town. So it would be a 30% increase in our budget. Currently, we're a $100,000 budget. Those are the two big questions. It sounds to me in terms of timing, Diane actually was ready to start rocking and rolling in January of 2020. I know for myself, and I don't think we as a group are ready to start rolling in January. It's halfway done. But I think there's some homework here that needs to get done in terms of I think we're gonna have to make a decision, but we don't have to make it today, as to whether or not to assess whether it makes sense to go 2022, 2023. Secondly, we need to justify if we're going to go for 35,000, at least have a good storyline. And I think that ties in with the work we're doing on the long-term plan, what we're planning to do, who we're planning to serve. And then C, it goes to the brochure that we were talking about earlier. We're going to need some materials that both talk about the library. We can use it in community outreach. We can use it as leave behinds. We can use it when we go out for the petitions. And we need some facts about what we have done. I think, shouldn't be all that hard to pull together since we've got the annual reports. How many people do we serve? How many programs do we run? So I want to open it up. That's a lot to talk about. That's not a singular question, but let me just open it up and say, should we be investing now in that groundwork so that I would think by the March meeting, we're in a position to make a go, no-go decision for this year? Yes.
I'm here. You can't see me because the dog needed to go out, but I'm still on the call.
Yeah, Kim, but Kim has some comments. Why don't we open it up?
Okay. Particularly from this meeting, finding out we went way over budget with Trevelyan, we're going to need to be spending more to handle our financial stuff. I feel like we need to do it. I have never been comfortable with $35,000. I think socking everybody with a wet fish just because we haven't done it for 15 years is tough. I do think we need to consider the possibility of doing it on a regular basis going forward, if not annually, then like biannually or something, and maybe lowering the amount, but continuing to do that amount for a few years in a row, and then maybe pulling back even a little bit from that. But particularly now with inflation being the way it is, whether it's affecting people or not, they emotionally feel like it is. What were the three things you raised? Should we do it?
How much should we do it? What's the amount? And should we go for it for this year?
I feel like this year. So those are my opinions.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Are we still going to have a problem with COVID this year? We have to go door to door, knock on doors. If COVID is still raging, I'm not doing that. I mean, we've been very careful at this point, and I won't give that up for anything if COVID is still raging.
Let me ask, I totally get that, Liz. I'm curious, and one thing I'd like to know is how Malaysia, Kinderhook, and New Lebanon all did 414s this year. So I'd be at least interesting to know what other mechanisms they used for outreach because they were dealing with a COVID environment.
Did they do a 414 or did they just get a raise? I thought if you only asked for 2%, you didn't need to do a 414.
No, you do.
You do. You'd need to ask for an override. If you're going to go over the 2%, you need to approve the override. The board would need to approve an override, but I think you still have to go out to the community. And if you remember, I remember driving up on 203, I think it was 203, there were signs, vote for the library or vote for the 28B. There were signs about the Malaysia 414.
Right.
And was everyone successful?
Yes.
Judy, as far as the numbers are concerned, when you look at that brochure, I thought that we put all the numbers in the brochure.
You mean what the impact would be on a family?
Yeah. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think it's there, you know, how many different kinds of classes we gave, how many books, how many people come into the library for different things.
We have to update it. No, absolutely, but we would have to update all that.
Need to update it with the numbers, but I think everything we could think of, we tried to put on that brochure.
No, you had a lot of good information. There was a fact sheet that also had the financial impact. And I am not disagreeing with you, Kim, at all, but I'm trying to find the piece of paper. I was surprised the financial impact was less than I anticipated it would be, you know, for an increase, assuming the 35K. As I said,
I would suggest that that we maybe soon, you know, we have figure out what the increase would be with asking for 35,000, what the increase would be for a family if we asked for 20 or 25.
That's easy. As I say, not having worked on it, I don't have easy access. I don't have muscle memory here to find the numbers right now. But yeah, that we could easily do. That would be very easy.
My sense is we should, I mean, we've put it off much too long. I think we need to do it. And it may be that investing in signs is important, if COVID is still raging, is as important as knocking on doors. We have to knock on doors to get signatures. Yeah. But the other thing is, you know, if you're knocking on doors and you are wearing a mask and you're not there very long and you're standing outdoors, it's not as dangerous. The disease seems to be becoming at this point more endemic than sending people to, you know, to the graveyard. And we don't know what the situation will be in the summer, but it is a time of year when you can be outdoors more. And maybe take precautions and also have those signs up in people's yards.
Well, weren't Rick and Destiny actually knocking on doors back in the fall?
Yes, we did.
So yeah, everything is subject to where we are in curve cycles and everything. You know, there's no question about that. But
well, and I'm not going to. I am offering to knock on doors as long as I'm never stepping across anybody's threshold. But
we didn't do that.
I'm going to say, you know, the classic line is the plural of anecdote is not data. But I found out afterwards that the day after Christmas, I hugged a woman who had COVID, but we were outdoors. We didn't speak in each other's faces. You know, your faces like this. I contested I didn't. So I was like, oh, well, I can get a signature. Yeah.
So you all heard about Barnwell today, right?
What?
You all heard about Barnwell today. 90 people have COVID and 37 staff. It's well over 100 people.
Yeah, no, the numbers are crazy.
Two of the Chatham schools have gone remote.
Yeah, Liz, I agree. I wouldn't do it right now.
Yeah.
No.
There's no way that I'd be knocking on people's doors right now. And if the situation is, you know, that's another thing, is that we could decide to do it. We could prepare. We could do everything.
No, I think
is outrageous. At the time, we can say, is there another way of doing this, or do we wait?
Yeah.
But I think that we almost have no choice but to do it, because it's been so many years and we need the money.
Yeah. But I also question going for so much at once, if that's going to turn people off. If we aren't better off planning on doing a couple of them or doing them every other year or something to catch up, rather than going for all that money at once.
To that point,
I think that Rojan Library one of the libraries went for a big amount, and they got it.
New Lebanon just went for
26,000.
Yeah, they went 17 years, I think it was, since the last one, and they did a very nice fact sheet explaining, you know, everything that, like, how do I explain this? They did a very nice job of explaining how to break that out over 17 years, and that, you know, it seemed like a large lump sum, but that in reality, I'm going inarticulate here, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
we should look into Lebanon's materials because they did a very nice job of explaining why people should vote for it anyway. And it passed overwhelmingly.
Yeah, I saw a news article on it, Rick, and it was $26,000, which was a 20% increase. Yep. So, it was a, you know, and then they did, you know, the article seemed to pick up, you know, a lot of that detail. But
am I doing the math in my head correctly, though, that what you were saying, Rick, earlier is that the number of people that we're dealing with is like 1,000 people?
No,
no,
because this goes back to the political boundaries that we have to deal with. So it is the town of Chatham.
And how many people are we divvying it up among?
Yeah, there's about 4,400 people in the town of Chatham. I can't remember the number of registered voters, but it's, you know, it's 2,000 something or somewhere along those lines.
Is ours different because we'll be asking people to approve this who use the Chatham Library and don't even use our library? Is that going to be a problem?
It wasn't last time.
That was the case last time as well, Liz. That hasn't changed. So, but the answer is, yeah, we're going to be asking people to vote yes, who've never used our library because they think the Chatham Middle School library is their library. And the Chatham district, just as a point of reference here, does not get taxpayer support directly. It is a school district library that also serves the general population. It's a weird anomaly. There's only 2 or 3 other libraries like that in the state. The state doesn't like it. The State Board of Education doesn't like it, but they're not going to force them to stop either.
I finally came across the piece of paper, which I think actually is kind of interesting. It was prepared last time, so it would assume the $35,000 increase. So if assessed property value is $100,000, the increase is $6.84. If the assessed value, I'll take it to the high end of what was calculated. If it's a $500,000 valuation on the property, the increase is $34.18. So the numbers themselves, 35,000 as a percentage is a huge percentage, but the actual impact on a family is modest.
It's modest. That's really helpful information. Thank you, Judy.
Yeah. I think as a strategy, one can always ask the question whether it doesn't make more sense to do it as 2 bites. I mean, that's a strategic question. There's a lot to be said for that, and just keep it going. Can I make a suggestion, since the night is long and we're not going to resolve this, but it seems like there is at least a sense of the board, if I can say that we need to really begin to plan for a 414 this year, recognizing that the world can change yet again, and that is life. That's the world we live in. I would ask for volunteers to work on what I think is going to be just right this point. It's the planning process of what has to be done. Fortunately, Diane left us with an amazing roadmap of what has to be done. I know I'm going to plan to speak with the folks at Mid-Hudson because I was involved in the one in 2004 and remember absolutely nothing. So, you know, step 1 is just going to be to get up to speed, figure out what has to be done, who has to be talked to, gathering the information we think we would need, both in terms of updating the fact sheets that were prepared before and working with the long-term strategy group on what it is we're going to be offering to the community. So I think there's planning work here right now. And if there's some volunteers, and down the road, we'll need people to work on organizing volunteers to sign petitions and, you know, all of that. But I think right now we can wait on signing people up for that activity. And I would like to do this with the idea of bringing this forward for a vote in March as to whether we're okay, we're going ahead with it at this level. And now we actually have to get the volunteers and begin, you know, the real outreach. Does that plan as an outline make sense?
Judy?
Okay, yep.
I think I have some good news here from COVID. Last year, whoever the powers that be, Department of Education, decided you only needed 25 signatures to get on the ballot. And I think you have to get on the ballot, and they kept that going, I'm pretty sure. So
Wow.
yeah. So there's that you'll market it afterwards, but you need to get on
right.
it.
You know, one of the thoughts I had, and this was in the context of talking with Kathleen and Julie Dottie about the long-term plan, we can use that planning process and the petition process to begin to educate people about what the library is offering. So we can't just kind of leave all the education and advocacy for the end. We want to use all the earlier phases to remind people we're here. You know, this is what we can do. What can we do for you? So that's great news in terms of the legal hurdle. But I think, you know, as part of the planning, I'd like to see more outreach sooner rather than later. So the question right now is, do I have any volunteers to work with me on this pre-planned plan?
Judy, I have a question. It seems to me that there is overlap, a lot of overlap between the long range plan and the 414. And that
I would agree.
Since Kathleen raised her hand to volunteer, that we just make it part of the
spectacular. Spectacular. And I was going to ask Liz if you wanted to be involved since you'd been involved in it last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had planned on working on that.
Great. Good.
Yeah, and obviously I'm gonna be involved in this as well.
Say again? I didn't hear what you said just now. Liz.
Rick.
Oh.
Rick.
I think that was Rick. Rick said he was going to work on it too.
Okay, great. Great.
So I just want to say two quick things about this. One is that yes, I agree with it's a big amount to go for up front, but I think we need to do that in order to catch up, and because we are needing to spend more money than ever before. But then I think as part of the long-term planning / 414, we need to then plan to go biannually after that, as Kinderhook does, you know, and be asking for relatively small amounts or modest amounts. And that's been Kinderhook's model all along. But I think the first one has got to be the big one, a bigger one. And whether it's $35,000 or even $50,000 that we asked that first time, that we do need to do that.
Okay, well, that's part of the pre-planned plan.
Yep. And then the second part of my second thought is that if we were making a decision tonight, I would be arguing for 2023, not November, this coming November, because and this is, you know, falls right into the nominating and governance committee. We need to have the treasurer and our financial management up and running and in good shape before we take this on. And then secondly, we just need more board members, period, to help take this on. Our board has shrunken down to, you know, a relatively small number, and we're going to need more people invested to do this and do it well, and to set us up to do it biannually afterwards.
But Rick, can't we use volunteers as well, like we do on the committees?
Oh yeah, and I'm hoping, yes, and I'm hoping that the committee people who are on the committees and already invested in the library will want to be helpful with getting the 414 passed. And we should build that into our planning process to ask them for that help and to be able to tell them exactly what that help looks like and what they can do to be helpful.
Yeah.
But Rick, here's an argument for not putting it off to 2023, and that is the details that Vicki just offered. You know, if that still holds true for this year, the petition portion of it won't be as onerous.
That's absolutely true. But as Judy was saying, I think it was Judy, or maybe it was Kim, was saying earlier. Gathering petitions is also part of your outreach to get the 414 passed, you know. So getting only 25 is great because that's an easy thing to check off your list, but you're still going to have to go talk to all those people as part of the marketing, all those other people who you would have had to get to sign the petition anyway, eventually. So that, yes, that's an easy check off now, where it was going to be a little harder before. You know, we were going to need 200 something plus signatures, and now it's down to 25. But we're still going to have to, you know, go out and talk to people and do that marketing.
And it's a good, you know, if we don't have a huge, another flare up of COVID, who knows, it would be a good thing to do it this year. Because
Yes.
we really do need the money.
Really?
You know, we also didn't mention that, you know, you were thinking of hiring somebody for the library to handle ELIC. And that's going to be a lot of extra hours of staff time. You know, we want to do the ramp. We want to do this. We want to do that. You know, we really do need the money. And we need the money to hire, you know, somebody who's going to do the finances as an outsourced.
Yes, that is all the argument for doing it this fall. There's no doubt about it. And hopefully, you know, my concerns about volunteers and board members and the treasurer, we can, you know, as we're heading into the March meeting, we'll have a much clearer picture of those things, you know. So I've already, you know, I've got 4 requests out to meet with prospective board members. Everybody, you know, I don't know that those are coming together anytime soon, but COVID's making it harder, because I think those are conversations you need to have in person as opposed to just a phone call or a FaceTime, as it were. I'm doing that outreach now, but it's very slow going. Yeah. You know, so I've texted people and say, hey, 2022 is the year I really, you know, that you really need to think about joining the board. Let's have that conversation. And they've all gotten back to me and said, that sounds good, but, you know, not now.
What is the drop dead date for deciding whether we're doing this year or not?
Well, drop dead something else. I think a preliminary decision, I think it should be mid-March, you know, whatever our March meeting is, assuming we have to go out and do the whole petition process, because then we have to get some materials printed and blah, blah, blah.
I'm just going to comment again, jump in here. A couple of years ago, just when Diane Tucker was going to do this, they changed the dates. I think I just said that to you, but they changed the dates for actually submitting, I think, to the county supervisors. I'm not sure exactly where. So it brought it all up sooner. So the first thing we need to do is get those dates. Sorry.
One of the things I'm going to talk
about. It's the county board of elections.
Yes, and they needed it much earlier than they used to, months earlier.
Yeah, it's going to be in August.
Yeah, Rick, let's talk offline, because you can point me. I will kind of go through the legal bit of it and actually get all the legal details. So we have the time and the deadlines and all of that stuff. And I'll also get in touch with the folks at Mid-Hudson and see if they have any updates or can give us information on what the other libraries did. And I'll undertake to do that, you know, now. So we at least have a little more detail to answer your question, Kim, and kind of frame what we have to do when.
I'll say one last thing, if I can. I know I'm butting in here today. I didn't mean to butt in, but every library's passed last year, even in the time of COVID. Every single, people know that they want their libraries to go forward, to stay solvent. So they have been stepping up. I don't know how many years that's gonna, you know, stay on, but that's a few years ago, there was 1 or 2 libraries that were turned down. They went back. One library went back the third year, they got it. So it's not an all or nothing. If you don't get it this year, if we don't get it this year, you're just laying the groundwork for the next year. And with that, I will stop talking at your meeting. I'm sorry.
All that is true. All of that is true. And, you know, it might very well be that 2022 is the year to do it for all the reasons that everybody's saying. My hesitation is, or I just see it being really hard to do without having our treasurer and financial house in order.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So hopefully between now and March, we can get that, you know, lined up. All right, so I've been in touch with the Board of Elections by text already, and I'll be talking. So Judy, I'll make the introduction. Do you want me to be the go-between, or do you want me to make the introduction between you and the board?
I'm happy to, you know, you make the introductions. I'm happy to have the conversation, get all the detail.
Okay, great. All right.
Next is new business, if you're moving on. Sorry.
It's 2 hours.
Yeah, it's enough time.
I know, well, we have new business and nominating and governance. So whatever you want to do.
Nominating and governance, I just did.
Oh, right, okay.
And 414 is the new business.
Yeah.
All right. If there is no new business, let's do it this way. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I motion we adjourn.
I'll second it. Let me get my glass of wine and I'll raise it.
I'm going to have a single malt. All those in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. It was a long meeting, but I thought it was a good one.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
All right. Have a good night.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Night.